History often hinges on singular moments, decisions that echo through decades and shape the destiny of nations. Today we're exploring one such moment, November 29, 1947, when the United Nations General Assembly voted on Resolution 181, forever changing the landscape of the Middle East. But to truly understand the magnitude of this vote and its lasting implications, we need to embark on a journey through time, examining not just the events of 1947, but the complex web of historical forces that led to this crucial moment. Our story begins in the waning days of the Ottoman Empire. For centuries, Palestine had been part of the Ottoman realm, a land where different communities, Muslims, Christians, and Jews, lived under Ottoman administration. The empire's collapse following World War I created a power vacuum that would have far-reaching consequences. Following the victory of the British Empire on the Ottomans and the conquest of Palestine and Syria by General Sir Edmund Allenby in 1917, the mandate system was established in San Remo Conference in 1920, and later also by the League of Nations in 1922. Under those decisions, Britain assumed control of Palestine and inherited a territory already grappling with competing national aspirations. The Balfour Declaration of 1917 had promised to support the establishment of a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine, while simultaneously promising to protect the civil and religious rights of non-Jewish inhabitants. The British Mandate period witnessed significant demographic changes. Jewish immigration increased dramatically, particularly in the 1930s as Jews fled rising anti-Semitism in Europe. This shift in population dynamics created new tensions. The Arab population, seeing their majority status potentially threatened, launched the Arab Revolt of 1936 to 1939, a significant uprising that forced Britain to reassess its policies. The Peal Commission of 1937 marked Britain's first serious attempt at resolving the escalating crisis. Its revolutionary proposal, partition, would become a recurring theme in future peace plans. The Commission's report acknowledged a fundamental reality. The national aspirations of both communities appeared irreconcilable within a single state. The Commission's proposed borders would have created a small Jewish state in the Galilee and coastal plain, with a larger Arab state in the remaining territory. Jerusalem would remain under British control. This proposal, while rejected, established partition as a potential solution and previewed the difficult territorial compromises that would characterize future negotiations. The Second World War transformed the political landscape. The Holocaust's systematic murder of 6 million Jews created a moral imperative for a Jewish state that resonated with much of the international community. Jewish immigration to Palestine became not just a matter of national aspiration, but of survival. By 1947, Britain, exhausted by war and unable to reconcile its conflicting promises, announced its intention to terminate the mandate. The newly formed United Nations inherited the challenge of determining Palestine's future. The UN Special Committee on Palestine spent months studying the situation. Their recommendation, which became Resolution 181, proposed a more complex partition than the Peal Commission had envisioned. The plan would divide the territory into 3 parts: a Jewish state covering 56% of the mandate territory, an Arab state covering 43%, and an internationally administered Jerusalem. The proposal attempted to account for demographic realities while ensuring economic viability for both states. The Jewish state would have a slight Jewish majority, while the Arab state would be overwhelmingly Arab. Jerusalem's international status aimed to protect its religious significance for all three monotheistic faiths. The Jewish Agency, representing the Jewish community in Palestine, accepted the plan despite reservations about its borders. Their acceptance reflected a pragmatic recognition that international legitimacy for Jewish statehood outweighed territorial concerns. The adoption of the General Assembly's resolution in support of establishing a Jewish state was received by the Jewish Yishuv with great joy. Close to midnight, when the news was broadcast on the radio that the necessary majority had been obtained in the UN General Assembly, masses of people danced in the streets. The Arab Higher Committee, along with Arab states, rejected the Partition Plan outright. Their position stemmed from several principles. They questioned the UN's authority to divide their land, opposed the allocation of territory to a Jewish state, and objected to the separation of Jerusalem from Arab control. The months following the UN vote saw increasing violence. The British withdrawal created a power vacuum that both sides rushed to fill. Jewish forces focused on securing territories allocated to the Jewish state and preparing for Arab intervention. Arab forces sought to prevent the implementation of the Partition Plan. On May 14, 1948, as the British mandate officially ended, David Ben-Gurion proclaimed the establishment of the State of Israel. Within hours, armies from Egypt, Syria, Jordan, Lebanon and Iraq invaded, beginning what Israelis call the War of Independence, and Palestinians remember as the Nakba. The war's outcome redrew the map of the region. Israel not only survived, but expanded its territory beyond the UN partition borders. The proposed Arab state never materialized. Egypt occupied Gaza, while Jordan annexed the West Bank. Over 700,000 Palestinians fled or were expelled, creating a refugee crisis that continues to this day. The Palestinian refugee situation became a central issue in the Arab-Israeli conflict. These refugees and their descendants, now numbering millions, maintain claims to their ancestral homes. The following decades saw several wars that further transformed the region. The 1967 Six-Day War resulted in Israeli control over the West Bank, Gaza Strip, Sinai Peninsula, and Golan Heights. The 1973 Yom Kippur War led to the 1978 Camp David Accords and peace between Israel and Egypt. The 1993 Oslo Accords marked the first direct agreements between Israel and the Palestine Liberation Organization. These accords established the Palestinian Authority and outlined a process for resolving final status issues. However, key questions about borders, settlements, refugees, and Jerusalem remained unresolved. Today, the legacy of Resolution 181 continues to shape regional dynamics. The two-state solution, conceptually similar to the 1947 Partition Plan, remains the internationally preferred framework for peace. Yet, changing realities on the ground, including Israeli settlements in the West Bank and the political division between the West Bank and Gaza, complicate its implementation. Jerusalem's status remains particularly contentious. The city, which the UN envisioned as an international zone, has become a focal point of the conflict. Israel maintains its claim to Jerusalem as its undivided capital, while Palestinians seek East Jerusalem as their future capital. On October 7, 2023, when Hamas Palestinian Organization launched a surprise attack on Israel, firing thousands of rockets and infiltrating Israeli territory, resulting in a massacre of over 1,200 Israeli citizens, thousands of injuries, and over 240 kidnapped people, of whom 101 are still held hostages, and violent rapes, as well as destruction and plundering of property. Among the participants in this massacre were so-called civilians, journalists, and even UNRWA's employees, which is the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine refugees in the Near East. In response, Israel initiated extensive airstrikes and a ground invasion of Gaza, leading to a severe humanitarian crisis as the conflict escalated. By early 2024, the death toll in Gaza had reportedly exceeded 42,000. With widespread destruction of infrastructure and a significant portion of the population displaced. Efforts for ceasefires and humanitarian aid have faced numerous challenges amid ongoing violence and political. It seems that Hamas's DIDS pushes the possibility for a two-state solution years ahead, if ever. The human impact of these historical decisions and recent events continues to reverberate. Israeli citizens face security challenges and loss of trust while building a thriving modern state. Palestinians in the West Bank navigate life under occupation, while those in Gaza face severe destruction brought to them by Hamas. Palestinian refugees across the region still demand the right of return to lands, their properties and communities left decades ago, which Israel will never agree to. The story of Resolution 181 teaches us crucial lessons about international diplomacy, political pragmatism, nationalism, and the challenge of reconciling competing historical claims. It reminds us that moments of decision can have consequences that span generations. Understanding this history is essential not just for comprehending current events, but for appreciating the complexity of finding a just and lasting peace. The questions raised in 1947 about self-determination, security, and coexistence remain relevant today. As we conclude this exploration of UN Resolution 181, we're reminded that history is not just about past events. It's about understanding how those events shape our present and influence our future. The decisions made in 1947 continue to affect millions of lives and influence global politics. If you found this deep dive into history enlightening, please consider subscribing to our channel for more historical analysis. Share your thoughts in the comments below and join us next week as we explore another pivotal moment that shaped our world.